Hello everybody, happy Sunday. Thank you for being here. Appreciate all of you that show up in any capacity as always. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we have quite a bit going on this week. Let's go ahead and put our intention up here. Intentions are always released on Friday, so that way you can have them ahead of the weekly video that came out today. They're always released Saturday mornings. So if you haven't seen the full breakdown to the week, you can go ahead and take a look there. And the goal is to have all that available before we come to this space. So that way you have some time to listen to everything, take the intention, contemplate, and just see what comes up. See if there's any thoughts, any feelings, any emotions, anything that is pinged that has been going on within your life. Just see what may or may not come up. And then we come here to this space and we zoom in a little bit more on the intention and create those personal conversations. So our intention here for this week, ISS energy exertion. ISS energy exertion. I think there's several ways this week that we can just look at our own energy, our own vitality, and our own willpower, our own strength, and just everything that our own specific energy encompasses here this week. So let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and put the chart up like we've been doing for quite some time now. I've said this before, if looking at the chart is overwhelming, if it's just too much, or you know, it just doesn't feel good in any sort of way, then look away. Take it in small bite-sized pieces. Just listen if that works out better for you. The cool thing about these virtual meditations is that you can take what works for you and you can leave the rest, right? You can tailor it completely to yourself, and I encourage you to do that. So with everything within these sessions, you know, take what works for you, leave the rest. If it resonates, awesome. If it does not, then that's okay too. So I'm going to go ahead and put the chart up here. You're going to see the chart set to now, so January 11th, Sunday, just after 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see that the moon is in the sign of Scorpio at about 7 degrees right now. And if we take our attention to the 6th house, you'll find the sign of Capricorn. That's our focus again for this week. We've been focusing a lot on Capricorn within the last while. You can see that we have several planets there. We know that, you know, Venus and Mars have been sitting with the sun. You can see that Mars and the sun are still sitting at the same degree. They will be through tomorrow as well. So they'll sit together through the 22nd degree of Capricorn. And all of that Capricorn energy is in opposition to Jupiter. We have seen Venus, Sun, and Mars go through the exact opposition to Jupiter. This week, Mercury is going to go through that exact opposition. We talked about that last week on our Sunday session. We talked about that last week on the weekly video. So if you missed any of the discussion about the other planets going through the opposition, or even that Mars, Venus, Cazimi, then take a look at last week's content. This week, we're going to take a focus. Part of our focus is going to be on Mercury moving through that opposition. So if I go ahead and roll this wheel forward a few days, if I bring it forward into Wednesday here, I'm going to back it up just a few hours because it does move kind of quickly, just so that way you can see it exact here. Okay. Yeah, so Tuesday into Wednesday, we have Mercury opposing Jupiter here. So you'll see that at the 19th degree of Capricorn, you have Mercury, and then directly across the wheel at 19 degrees of Cancer, you have Jupiter. So that's one of our big aspects that we're going to focus on for this week for our meditation. The other big one is Mercury and Mars coming together. So we have this little sequence here this week where Mercury moves into the opposition with Jupiter, and then it moves into the conjunction with Mars. So if I go ahead and bring this forward a couple days here, you'll see that the two planets conjoin Saturday here. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and roll it forward a few hours. Okay. You see Mercury and Mars coming together in the conjunction. Remember that Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, so it's one of the better signs for Mars to be in. And Mercury is sitting right there with it. At the same time, you can see that the Sun is in a trine to Uranus in the 12th house of the sign of Taurus in this chart, as well as being in a sextile to Saturn in Pisces. So you can see the Sun is at 27 degrees of Capricorn, we have Saturn at 27 degrees of Pisces, we have Uranus at 27 degrees of Taurus here. So those planets are all interacting together. This is some pretty powerful energy coming through all at one time here together. If we move back, oops. Sorry guys, I'm pressing all the wrong buttons. Okay, here we are. If we move back to our intention and we think about the planets that we're working here with this week, think about Mars within its own right, right? Think about the Sun coming through here. Thinking about Mercury coming through. And then we take a look at our intention. We have some Saturn mixed in there too. We have Uranus mixed in there as well. But Mercury being a key player, Mars being a key player, the Sun being a key player as far as like the transiting, triggering planets for sure. So when you have Mercury and Mars coming together, there is a very big concentration of mental and physical energy at one time, okay? In the sign of Capricorn, where things are slow, things are deliberate, things are precise, and there is a method to the madness, right? There is a methodological component to the way that we move. We move very systematically in the sign of Capricorn. Things are done for a reason in Capricorn, right? They're moving towards a goal. They're moving towards an ideal. It's putting in the work to get us towards whatever it is that we are working towards, right? So when you have Mercury there, the mind is very focused. The mind can be very serious, very determined, and very precise, very focused on what is in front of it, the systems that are being created, the foundations, and maybe what we can lay down to be able to create in the future. Mars is there as well. So Mars is very determined. Mars within its own right is action and motivation and drive, right? So it's very consistent. It's Saturn's sign. So when Saturn decides it's going to do something or either not going to do something, it's immovable. It's difficult to change Saturn's mind, right? It's an earth sign. So Capricorn, once it gets moving, it builds momentum. Okay, once that momentum starts to build, it can be hard to slow that momentum down. So you get a very calculated action, right? You get movements that are precise. You get movements that are swift, but strong and stable. I think of swiftness when I think of Mars and Mercury. I think of a quick moving mind. I think of agility and speed and a strength that can be both physical and mental fortitude, all at one time here. There's a lot of energy that can be exerted, but it's energy in the sign of Capricorn. It's energy being exerted towards something that is hopefully sustainable, right? It's we're building foundations, we are putting together frameworks, and we are moving towards a goal. We are moving up a mountain with a very specific place in mind. Capricorn can be very laser focused, and can almost have its blinders up and block out anything else that could be a distraction. It's very good at being able to focus, tunnel vision, right? Saturn can say, no, you need to move out of my way here. So there's a lot of energy that can be exerted here. We can have a lot of strength and willpower to carry out things that maybe we feel like the energy has been lacking on, or if there's things we've been trying to put into motion or put into plan here, there could be the staying power to stick with it here throughout this week here, right? But at the same time, in the sign of Capricorn, when we start moving and we start building, we can just kind of get stuck in that role, right? Where we just kind of start bulldozing through the things that we are working towards, right? Or working through. And then, maybe there's things that we've moved through that we wouldn't have brushed by quite so fast or brushed aside, or, if we've bulldozed through and, if there's things that have been I don't know, destroyed for a lack of a better word, then, you know, maybe we could have a little bit of regret with that later. However, right before this conjunction, Mercury moves into the opposition with Jupiter. And I've talked a lot about the oppositions between Capricorn and Cancer, especially with Jupiter there, and Jupiter being the teacher, the one that brings the insight and the understandings, the deeper understandings of the root, of the place that we've come from, of the origin of our own history, as well as like a collective history, ancestral history. So when we're building, when we're climbing mountains, when we are doing the hard things, remember what it's worth, right? Remember where that motivation came from, and remember where we've come from. Remember our basis, right? Sometimes we need to be reminded of exactly what the purpose is, what we are building for, right? Are we building for simply for the act of building and to keep moving and to keep progressing and to be able to keep you know, putting accomplishments underneath our belt, or is there a greater purpose? Is there a greater meaning? The mountains that we're climbing, do they have something to do with where we've come from, right? Kind of like that. These are the questions that come into play here just before Mars and Mercury come together in that conjunction. So I'm wondering if the reminder that Mercury gets, right, to assess where we are exerting our energy. You know, are we putting it in the place that we need to? Or do we need to put forth more energy, right? Are we overexerting ourselves, all right? Are we allowing ourselves to rest enough? Are we pushing ourselves too far here? Assessing that energy exertion this week, I feel like could be very, very helpful, because as Mercury and Mars come together, they are forceful action, right? They are the assertion of willpower. Mentally, physically, communicatively, you could easily have explosive conversations that can come about here. So if we assess where that explosion of energy goes, right, then that can just only be helpful to all of us here. If we look forward towards the end of the week, just after, as this conjunction comes through here, the sun starts making some interactions here. Okay, and this is just on the heels of the new moon that we're going to have next Sunday. We will talk about that next week in the weekly video, as well as having our meditation on the day of the new moon. So all of this is coming through as the moon is darkening, as the moon is moving towards the dark moon and getting ready to start a new phase. So as we are assessing where we exert our energy and what we are putting our energy towards, these are assessments that we can take with us into the next lunar cycle, right? As well as into the next cycle for Mars and for Venus. You know, Mercury's going to get its synodic reset here too really soon with the conjunction with the sun. That's just happening in the sign of Aquarius here in a couple weeks. So very willful action, calculated action, right? The ability to be able to move forward, make decisions. Again, Jupiter sitting there in opposition. So the reminder, right? Remember where you came from. Remember the sensitive parts of you. Saturn can often just kind of move aside whatever it needs to move aside without taking anything else into consideration, right? If you think about the planet of death, planet of Saturn representing death and decay, when it's time for something to fall away, think about like a piece of fruit on a tree. When it has come to its full ripeness and it starts to become overripe, and it starts to rot and then it falls from the tree, like there's nothing you can do to change that, right? So Saturn can be very, very definite. So you can get that in the sign of Capricorn. The balance is found on the other side, in the opposition, right? So the balance to death and to decay is the moon, right? The place of birth, the place of growth and proliferation, kind of like that. So a reminder of that here this week, as we have all of this beautiful, wonderful energy to be able to move forward and to assert ourselves and to be able to put new plans and motions, perhaps, into play here. And then The sun. The sun comes into the trine with Uranus, which can be very personally opening. And the sextile to Saturn can, first of all, there's the reception there between, because Capricorn, the sun is in the sign of Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign, and is coming into an interaction with Saturn. But when the sun and Uranus come into contact, the light, the one, the soul, our own vital energy, our vitality, energy of vitality, our own life force comes into a place where it can be liberated. It can be released, and if there's something that feels like it's been allowing us to not fully express ourselves, then we might find the pathway to be able to move through that here. Right? Being able to do, and then being able to put it into a system and into a framework with that interaction with Saturn at the same time here. There is potentials for problem solving and moving in new pathways, moving in new directions to be able to open up to something bigger by the end of the week. However, that reminder from Jupiter, I think, is important here too. So that's why I say I assess energy exertion. And then what do you do with it? That's up to you, right? Do you expend your energy? Do you save it? You know, assessing exactly where you are spending your energy and making sure that it's where it feels like it needs to be, I guess, right? Sip of tea. Mars is very strong in the sign of Capricorn. It's exalted, so it's lifted up. It's up on a pedestal, right? It can, when it's up on that pedestal, it can see further than other planets can. So it can help Mercury. It can lift Mercury up too, right? So it can tell Mercury, hey, we can move forward. We can take these actions. We can assert ourselves, and it carries Mercury through that. I think some of this can be very opening to a bit more of a process, because if you notice, these planets are getting towards the end of Capricorn. They're going to move into the sign of Aquarius, and they're going to all move into a conjunction with Pluto. So there is this transformation, this opening that can be building for some of us that's going to move towards that. If I look at the cards, the card that pulled for this week, we had the King of Wands came up here. And when I think of the King of Wands, I think of a strong, calculated energy that's able to hold itself up. It knows its worth, it knows its strength, and it knows where it's going, right? When I think of the King calls the shots, right? The King has a protection around it. I think about Mars being exalted in the sign of Capricorn. It's in a place where it's able to do the things that it likes to do and knows how to act here. When I think of Mars being in the sign of Capricorn versus maybe the sign of Aries, where it is in domicile, I think about how the King the King does not act. The King acts out of clarity, understanding, and informed action, right? Typically, when a King makes a decision, first of all, it's final. You're not going to go against the King. So I'm thinking about how when Saturn makes a decision, it's final. So like that death and decay, like that piece of fruit, when that fruit's overripe, it's overripe. There's nothing you can do to bring it back from that, right? You can slow down the ripening before it gets to that, but once the decision has been made that it's in that state, it's in that state. When a King makes a decision, that is the final decision. So when I think about Mars being in the sign of Capricorn, I think about that finality of Mars, of like, what Mars is going to do was going to do, but it's much more calculated. It's much more strategic, and it's much more predetermined versus like maybe the sign of Aries. So if I think of the King of Wands, maybe in the sign with Mars being in the sign of Capricorn, maybe I would think more of like the Knight being in the sign of Aries, right? Something that's a little bit more vulnerable, something that's a little bit more compulsive and a little bit more acting and then thinking later, right? Where Mars in the sign of Capricorn is going to think and it's going to calculate what it's going to do before it carries out the action. So, you know, whether that's constructive or deconstructive, that's a whole nother thing. And it can go both ways with this aspect here for sure. The king calls the final shots. He has the final say, but the king ideally is acting on behalf of the people, right? So again, this is that opposition to Jupiter. Remember the people. Remember the sign of Cancer, right? Remember where you came from. Do not become power hungry. That can be the warning with the King of Wands here. And I think that could be the warning for this week too. Do not become so wrapped up in the goal or where you are going that you forget the purpose, that you are trudging along for what? What are you trudging along for? That's what I see with the King of Wands coming through here. So again, exerting that energy. The King of Wands can exert a very powerful energy, right? Think about when the king shows itself, everybody stops and everybody looks. But the king also will step aside and let others come, you know, not step into its place, but take action or do things that will just take things off the king's plate, right? Like the king can delegate. Delegating, that's the word that I'm thinking of. The king can delegate tasks to other people. Mars in the sign of Capricorn can delegate, right? So assessing where we are exerting our energy and then moving forward, because there is a powerful exertion of energy here this week. We can push forward in some pretty strong ways here and bring it forward into the next lunar cycle. But make sure we are not pushing too hard, right? Make sure we are not like what the reason is. And with that opposition to Jupiter too, when we remember the reason, it's a water sign, right? So the emotional charge behind some of this could be part of what maybe has us acting kind of swiftly. So like when we're acting out of emotion, you know, is there something more than that? Is it just an action within the moment, or is it deep-seated? Is it more calculated? Have we thought it through, right? We're not just lashing out. So let's tap into our energy this week, our own vital energy that we can exert here this week, right? I'm going to go ahead and leave the intention up for just another moment or two. I assess energy exertion. I assess energy exertion. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take the intention off of the screen here, and you're going to see my table here. I have a couple statues that are in a meditative pose. I'm going to go ahead and move the candle off here for a moment so you can see. Yep, you get a kitty cat and you get a skeleton with me, because those are my vibes there. So those are what you get. I just thought bringing these meditative figures will help us remember and remind us to slow down, stop, assess. Make sure that calculated action really is calculated. Make sure we've laid out the plan, right? Mercury and Mars can be pretty explosive. They can just charge forward. And again, Saturn, when Saturn acts, it's definite, right? So I brought in these two figures to just remind us to stop and to contemplate and to take a deep breath maybe before we act this week. Kind of like that. All right, I'm going to get ready to move into the meditative portion. I'm going to light our intentional candle, and as I do so, I'm going to recite our intentional phrase. As I recite the intentional phrase, I encourage you to say it with me in any capacity that you are able to, saying it out loud, saying it in your head, writing it down on a piece of paper, whatever works best for you. Okay. All right. Light the candle. Flame ignites. As the flame ignites, it begins to grow. As the flame grows, so does our intention. I assess energy exertion. I assess energy exertion. This week, Mars, the planet of our ambition, our willpower, meets Mercury, the problem solver, the questioner, the one who finds a way. Mars likes to act. We can find a way to act. We can exert the energy, right? The sun, our vitality, our own energy, our prana, the life source, the soul that lights, this little light of mine that shines from within and shines outward, comes into contact with Uranus, destabilizing vital energy. Looking at our soul, looking at our purpose, and seeing where the breakthrough needs to be. Maybe we've already taken the actions with Mars and Mercury. Before all of that, Mercury comes across Jupiter, the one that asks questions, comes across the one that carries the insights, the knowledge, and the wisdom. Whether it's delivered as a clear, solid answer, or it leads us to a place of our own discovery. It's the guider, it's the teacher. So as we begin our meditation, if you're ready to go ahead and do so, I invite you to close your eyes. If you're not quite ready to do that, perhaps you can soften your gaze, relax your eyes, and let your gaze fall where it falls naturally. As you begin to settle in, your attention may naturally go to your breath. As you begin to focus on your breath, the natural instinct may be to start to change or alter that breath. Maybe make it move towards what feels like a more ideal state. I'm going to encourage you to hold off on that. See if you can sit with your breath in a space of just noticing, observing, noticing, and acknowledging the breath the way it comes to you naturally. Breathing in and breathing out, following the inhale and following the exhale. Notice what you notice. Bring your attention back gently when needed. This moment we are intentionally focusing on our breath. The breath that is a accumulation of everything that has come before this moment. Your experiences, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, all of it. So there is a way when you sit with the breath without changing, without altering, without saying there's improvement needed here. There is a way in which that is your response to this life, to your experiences. And there's a way in which you honor the breath in the space that it is, knowing that it's exactly as it should be in this moment. There's a level of honoring that comes with acknowledging without manipulating or changing. Therefore, when you honor the breath, you honor the life and you honor the path. The path of the life that is unfolding at every moment, whether we are consciously focusing on it or not. Just like your breath. You may be intentionally focusing on your breath at this moment, but the inhales and the exhales, they continue whether or not you are consciously focusing on them. The inhales and the exhales are one of those autonomic functions of your body that happen whether you are consciously aware of it or not. When you are awake, when you are asleep, when you are happy, when you are sad, when you are laughing, or when you are crying, the breath still moves. The inhales come, the exhales go. Always unfolding, just like this life. Cycling between inhales and exhales, highs and lows, holding and releasing. As that inhale and exhale process happens, energy moves, energy is exerted, energy accumulates. There is a dance that happens here. There's a dance that happens within your own body and your own being, as well as a conversation that happens between you and, let's call it, the universe, the space around you, God, Creator, that universal energy that we are all a part of. As you breathe in Energy from the ethers around you enter your body and your being, filling you up, expanding you from the inside out, holding you and supporting you. And then on the exhale, you release your own air from within your being up and out into the ethers. An exchange that repeats as energy enters your being and releases from your being. As you continue to breathe in and out, notice this energetic exchange as air exits your body and enters your body. Perhaps you start to notice a sensation moving throughout your being. Perhaps you start to notice colors or some other visual. Perhaps there's none of that. Notice what you notice. Assess the energy that is flowing in and out of your being. Attention begins to wander. Gently bring it back to the breath. Focusing on that energetic exchange. Slowly and naturally you begin to deepen the breath. Deepening the inhale, deepening the exhale. Here, allow your only goal to be that each inhale brings in slightly more air, slightly more energy, and each exhale releases slightly more air, slightly more energy than the exhale that came before it. Slow, determined, calculated, methodological movements of your breath. A breath that begins slow and steady within you. You feel it start growing from deep within your abdomen as it expels out through your body. And as you bring it in, you feel it coming into that space deep within you. Ever so slowly, the breath grows, increases and intensifies As your breath grows, so does your connection to your body, to your breath, and to your own energy. This week, as we focus once again on the sign and house of Capricorn, the place of Saturn, a place of determination, a place of willpower, a place of quiet, stable, earthly strength. We find movement, we find motivation. We may even find answers to questions that we've been asking. We find ourselves in a space where, just like the King of Wands, we can take charge of the decisions at hand. We can take life in our own energy, into our own hands and our own abilities. We can move swiftly. The goals and the motivations that have been setting in, how can you take steps towards them this week? There is a quiet energy that begins within and builds and builds and grows over time, just as the breath grows. What are the goals that you have at hand? Where do you see yourself going? Picture this in your head. Picture it in its highest expression. And then see it lifting up higher and higher into the air. Just as the exalted Mars can be lifted up to a view where it can see a little wider perspective than others. Picture your goal being lifted on high to where it has a perspective that even you can't quite comprehend at this moment. But seeing that goal, seeing that success, seeing that determination, you feel the pull and the energy needed to climb towards it. Moving slowly, steadily, sustaining your energy, climbing up that mountain. And as you put in the work, you put in the effort, remembering the reason, remembering the motivation, the work and the effort strengthens you. As long as you put in the time and the real, serious effort. There is strength, there is courage, there is determination. There is an opening of our own vital energy, physically through the earth signs. Sun and Uranus come into a trine, expanding into one another. Perhaps there are movements, actions, and energy that we can exert that increases our own vitality, our own strength, and our own will in ways that surprise us. There is a ton of energy to exert this week. Mars is strong, the Sun is strong. They come into contact with fluid moving planets, planets of question, planets of change. When you are calling the shots, when you are keeping your goal in mind this week, remember the reason, remember the people, remember the sign of Cancer. Remember where the motivation came from within. Move strongly, move swiftly, and move wisely. This week I leave you with strength, I leave you with courage, I leave you with the ability to solve problems and questions that come your way. I leave you with the visions of your goals and your ambitions in your head, and the will and strength within your heart to move forward. As this meditation comes to a close, as the music begins to fade out, and as my words and my voice disappears from your ears, keep the vision of your goal, keep that picture in your head, and feel what motivates you, feel what moves you. Feel what liberates you from stagnant energy. I assess energy exertion.